Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, faked proof that I had a flat tire so that the lazy people in my group project would have to do the presentation themselves, therefore likely will fail. Watched a work truck almost run a family minivan off the road, chased down and reported. Some women stole from me at a bar and I made sure they would never be let in again. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Faked proof that I had a flat tire so that the lazy people in my group project would have to do the presentation themselves, therefore likely will fail. I'm in a class where a group research project/presentation is a huge chunk of overall points. Everyone knows in group projects you always have that one slacker who doesn't do anything that you have to compensate for. However, I got stuck with possibly the worst 3 people to be in a project within the class. I did the entire research, presentation, poster boards, etc. among many other annoying things myself. I tried talking to them and telling them they needed to put in their share of effort. Ignored. I'd send them tasks to do, ignored. I'd try to schedule meetings, they'd say they were coming and then leave me alone at the library. This happened from the get-go. It was abundantly clear that they expected everyone else to do the work, but everyone else turned out to be just me. Rule: we couldn't have things 100% memorized word for word, and we couldn't read off of anything. We had to actually know the subject. I was fully prepared to do most of the talking and even wrote down a small script for them and told them to know what to say during their part, at the very least. The night before I told them we had to meet to at least go over the whole thing one time. Once again, none of them showed. At this point I'm livid and decide they can just do it themselves, which means they'd get up there, not know a thing to say other than the small info I gave them, and couldn't even bullshit anything because they did no research. Thing is, if we miss without an excuse, we fail the project. If you have an excuse, you have to have documentation. I commute and live an hour away, so I decide that I'll conveniently have a flat tire right before class. Went out and actually bought a tire so I could have the receipt to prove it. Emailed the professor, who said I can present by myself during his office hours. Turns out, they completely bombed, and not only probably failed the project, but since they're bad students, might even make them fail the class. Had the exact opposite happen to me once. I was in a group with 2 girls and a guy. The project was done over an entire semester and presented in parts. The breakdown is we pick a country and explore birth, death, and migration rates, as well as the country's economic status and how this affects said rates. The chicks and I did our parts to the best of our ability. The dude pulled no-show moves at every turn, didn't have a sitter, didn't have a ride, etc. So, we went on without him. And we let the professor know that he had contributed nothing and we wouldn't be putting his name on our work. The professor made the guy be his own group and he had to do about 35 pages worth of work on his own, presented over 4 parts. It was satisfying. I had a group project last semester and only 2 other people, out of 7, would respond to communication or show up to meetings. We had one rehearsal the day before presentation and I was worried the 4 people didn't do their part or wouldn't show. They all showed up, with their parts ready. Turns out they just really sucked at communicating. It was a relief, but I was also annoyed that they had me so stressed, lol. This was so satisfying to read. I've only had bad partners on small projects, and it was awful, so I can only imagine what it would feel like with an important project. Did you end up presenting in his office later? Did he say anything about their attempt? I presented yesterday, he just told me good job and didn't mention their efforts. Good job, but a nail through the tire may have been cheaper, that could have been plugged and those work fairly well, just don't go through the sidewall. She just needed to buy a tire and take a photo of the receipt and then return the tire after the presentation. Can't they return the tire? I assume they didn't actually get a flat tire for proof, lol. You're my hero. I had a couple groups in college I would have loved to pull something like this on. Now this is some fire petty revenge. Good job, especially with the tire receipt. I don't know what you scored on your prez, but you deserve an A+ for this situation. You should get extra credit for this. Also, can we get an update on what your professor did after you made your solo presentation? Watched a work truck almost run a family minivan off the road, chased down and reported. I was coming home from work one day in my shitbox. I was on a sparsely used rural 2-lane highway about 6 car lengths behind an F350 weight class flatbed truck. The truck slowly starts to drift into the other lane. Meep an oncoming little blue minivan has to go onto the shoulder to avoid a head-on collision, and they overcompensate when getting back on the road and almost hit me, who then had to make the same maneuver and almost go into the ditch to avoid a head-on collision. I see red. The truck keeps going like nothing happened. I follow the truck a few miles until it pulls up to a driveway. I snap a picture of the license plate and company name, the driver absolutely glaring at me. I called the real estate agent's number that was on the side of the truck and informed a lady that one of her drivers was driving erratically, possibly drunk. When I suggested her driver was under the influence, she suggested in a very rude tone that he was probably just messing with his GPS or texting someone. That wouldn't make that family any less dead, would it? You know what? I figured we could talk about this like adults, but if you want to take that attitude with me, we can involve the cops. And then I hung up on her and promptly reported the whole thing to the sheriffs. I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but I never saw that work truck in that neighborhood again. That woman's response to your call makes me think that she's received phone calls about that type of behavior several times in the past and just didn't give a shit. You did the right thing by reporting a dangerous driver. Good on you for reporting. Just think, you've potentially saved someone's life. I reported someone who was driving erratically in front of me and ran someone off the road. Turns out it was someone who just hadn't bothered to scrape their icy windshield off. What a moron. It was icy out and people could have been killed. Cops just scraped his windshield for him. That driver is an idiot for many reasons, but if he has a CDL and drives like that, he can very easily lose his CDL and there goes his job, which is what he deserves. Although I guess it depends on the state and country as far as the CDL is concerned. You did the right thing. A lot of people wouldn't have done what you did. Good on you. Around here, if you do a flatbed conversion, it's legally a tractor and not a truck, so insurance goes down and you don't need a CDL. Why would you need a CDL for a flatbed pickup? It drives the same as everyone's favorite F-150 grocery mobile, albeit with stiffer suspension. Messing with GPS or texting is still a distracted driver, which is still illegal. The hell was wrong with the person that answered the phone? I think a Google review of the business, including this story, might be in order. I have a story of the opposite experience. I live on the 101 and followed this big work van from an area 55 miles per hour into the city at 30 miles per hour. The guy driving was so nice to let others pass as he drove just a little over and sometimes a few miles under the speed limit and continuously entered the slow lane like he was supposed to, unlike the rigs that instead speed up in the passing lanes to only slow way down afterward. I was a few cars behind for several miles. We got into town and merged from 2 into 1 lane, and he smiled and waved at me for letting him merge in front of me since traffic was nearly a standstill and nobody was letting him in. He was so patient and careful. I called the number on the back of his rig and told them he was an amazing driver that deserved a raise. LOL. They were shocked I wasn't complaining. If you haven't yet, get a dashcam too. Footage would have been a good follow-up to the woman after her rudeness. Would have been satisfying to hear her sputtering that he must have just been messing with his GPS or was texting while driving. I reported an older woman in a massive 4-door luxury car for trying to text and drive. She nearly sideswiped us and people were actively dodging her. Fortunately, HWP responded almost immediately. I was on the phone with the dispatcher but actually saw them go past us and pull her over. I told my friend who works in for HWP and he told me that the woman said it was her right to text and drive and argued with them and ended up arrested because she started to drive off texting again. Poor dear, her driver was sick and she had to drive herself to lunch. Some women stole from me at a bar and I made sure they would never be let in again. This might be a mess to read, I'm sorry. So this happened about 2 years ago at this point, but it still brings me joy. I used to be an assistant manager at a club/bar and we were constantly understaffed to the point I was working 4 to 6 different jobs a night. One day I was working at the front door greeting guests, checking IDs, collecting the entrance fee, ECT. Now on the whole guests weren't terrible, but sometimes you can tell when someone will be most likely be trouble when they came inside. And I'm not the type of girl to feel bad for turning you away if you act disrespectful. But this one night I was at the door until it was time to close. Last call is 1:30, doors close at 1:45. As an assistant manager, one of my duties was to close out registers and make sure the servers or bar were even. This means after the front doors are closed I have to leave to go to others areas and work. We try and block off the front entrance and have all the guests exit through a side door close to the front. Now here is where the shit starts. I had a tip jar at the front door that I leave alone until I'm done with my closing duties. Not the best idea, I'm aware, but I was always under an extreme amount of stress and didn't want to take the extra time to unlock the box and take the money out and move it to the office. So I go about all of the closing duties and I finally go to collect my tips and my jacket only to find the tip jar is gone. I was pissed. It wasn't an insane amount of money, but at least $80. So I went through the cameras and found the 3 women who tried to take money out of the top, realized they couldn't, and just took the whole unit. I'm not sure if you all are familiar, but there is a system called Patron Scan that bars and clubs use to scan IDs to verify age and make sure it's not a fake and so on. But you are also able to make notes or place bans in disruptive or violent patrons. Internal bans are for your location only and public bans are worldwide with any other club/bar that uses this same system. So once I knew who the 3 women were I went digging through the guests from that day, well over 200, to find them, and when I did I placed a lifetime ban on them at our location, the only club in 50 miles, as well as a lifetime public ban with the note theft, stole tip jar from front door. Now I know it's not much, but I do know every other bar in the city and clubs/bars within 200 miles in our state use Patron Scan, let alone any other locations worldwide. I just really hope I ruined these women's night somewhere. They were also super rude at the door and were refusing to pay the $20 entrance fee on a Saturday. I'd love to see their reaction when they get rejected next time. The best part is even if the clubs decide to let them in they still have to face the embarrassment of theft being announced. And every time they attempt to enter a Patron Scan bar. This is fabulous. Especially since bars are few and far between. I also take pleasure in knowing that they could be going to a club in Italy and get rejected. Best $80 ever spent. Don't get disappointed, it's not international in all cases. Just imagine them spending the money for a big Vegas girls trip, just to be turned away at every door. That gives me the laugh I need to get through my day. I know, but I'm very sure the European DSGVO, data protection law, doesn't allow such a system there. FAFO around and find out. Stealing tip jar is low. Very low. I guess they will need that $80 for gas money to find a place they can get in. Good for you. We use Patron Scan here in Australia too. LOL, I would love for them to come for a holiday and immediately get rejected by place bans in disruptive or violent patrons. Those of us in the business refer to that as the Wonka policy. No violent patrons or you get sent to the juicer. If yours is the only club in a 50-mile radius, they're going to feel the social pain alright. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.